So we're back to the book where they talk about transcending from a hierarchical structure where your values based on your distance from the top to a network
Phails at philosophy.
Yeah.
structure where your value is how many nodes connect to you
Yeah.
and the quality of those nodes.
And I think that there is, and I think especially today, that transformation is real in our economic relationships, meaning our relationships by which we acquire the goods and services to live our lives, right? In a way that, yeah, it just wasn't even 50 years ago. If you think about how you get food,
Yeah.
and you go back to someone in the 1970s, right? How would you get food in the 1970s if you were living in Crestview?
Well, there'd be farmers.
There'd be farmers around, but you probably...
Ranchers and farmers,
I mean, this
right?
is developed like you would go to the Minimax, right? You would go to the IGA down the street when it was an IGA, or there was a local grocery store.
Yeah.
And you usually had one that was within range, right?
I think the thing that I get
But now
angry about because
all these different things, like you've got HEB, you've got grocery stores, you've got farm to table, delivery services, you have farmers. Like just the information task of figuring out how to manage your food web is much more complex and much less simple.
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. You get angry about what?
I just get angry about it with every single step in between the simple thing and accessing it. You have cost.
Mm-hmm.
You have middlemen,
Mhm.
and there's like way more of them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just kind of really late stage capitalism comes to mind a lot lately as I just need to probably get off of content for a little bit. I need to stop watching media because I'm like, I don't think we're going the right direction, and I don't think this is going to end well. And I don't feel better exposing myself to media when it's like Vanguard and BlackRock and State Street are owning everything and privatizing every area of your life. Things that should not be privatized, from healthcare to mental health care to like real estate to food to every aspect of the human's experience is now being controlled by these very small number of people, small companies.
And not just controlled by a small number of people, but controlled by a small number of people who understand their ethical obligations to be the generation of capital, not the generation of a good life for the people that they're working with.
Yeah.
Right. And there's already a problem if you concentrate power to a small number of people in a governance structure that understands its role. However much we want to criticize classic governance structures like monarchies, a monarch understood their role to be, if they reflected on it, as an ethical obligation. And we see this in South Asian structures of monarchy, East Asian structures of monarchy, European structures of monarchy. Like, at the end of the day, if you're the emperor of China, at the end of the day, if you're a king in Europe,
You're responsible for a bunch of people.
You're responsible for a bunch of people, and people who don't do that well are criticized for not doing that well.
But we're not doing that.
But we're not doing, we don't say, Vanguard, you're doing a bad job of taking care of people, because we don't even ask them of that.
Capitalism at its root is a form for distributing wealth to all the people, I would think, and to allow folks to get compensated for their value that they add into society.
Right.
But if all of the money goes to these places, there's not money to distribute to all of the people because it's being consolidated. It's being hoarded. Mm-hmm. I don't understand. And it's just this downward spiral of then those people control the government because they've got the money to invest in politics. And then we just get more of it and more of it and more of it. And it just replicates itself. And I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to turn that tide.
Right.
And America right now thinks Trump's going to do it.
Right.
Clearly they do. I mean, we have a majority of Americans. And you know what? I could be swayed that direction. I wasn't a fan of Kamala.
Right.
I would have voted for Kamala because I didn't want Trump,
Right.
but I didn't want Kamala.
Right. Because it's the same. Like it didn't feel like a choice between someone who is trumpeting the worst of late stage capitalism and someone who will get us out of the problems of late stage capitalism. It felt like a choice between someone who seemed to be trumpeting the worst of late stage capitalism and someone who's trumpeting late stage capitalism with a few band-aids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I think that's actually part of what led to the election going the direction it is. Like if you look at why people
are mad.
voted the way they were, the Democrats built themselves on not being Trump, but people were just as
you can't build yourself on
Right.
not being something else.
Right. And
Coke doesn't advertise itself as like, hey, drink Coke. We're not Pepsi.
And I think people were like, well, these people are saying that they're not that guy, and that guy at least says he has some things, even if they sound like bullshit. So
Yeah.
I'll try the bullshit first. Right.
And
yeah. So it was a strategic error. But I think at the end of the day, it's because we're caught up in this game of trying to, I'm also increasingly convinced that we're not at a stage where we're continuing to look for political solutions from the top are going to get us where we need to go. Right. No politician is going to.
Well, because they're controlled by the
Right.
lobbies, and we've got everybody but us controlling what goes on up there.
And at the end of the day,
the masses.
They also belong to a class of people who, by the very nature of who they are, have as their primary interest the advancement of their political careers. And that has only become reinforced in the past decades. And they're unapologetic about it now. If I look at kind of the difference between politicians 50 years ago and politicians now, 50 years ago, they would pretend like they were trying to govern. They don't even pretend that anymore. They just pretend like they're going to be able to be the people in power, right? And I know that there's a certain level of hypocrisy to that earlier generation of politicians, but it's a hypocrisy that at least meant that they had to pretend to govern, and so they got some actual governance done in the meantime. There's a part of what I've realized is maybe we actually need to, in our politicians, tolerate the hypocrisy more and just play the game with them. It's like, no, we want you to govern. Cut out this nonsense.
Yeah.
But instead we've caught up in the kind of like team sport of whether my side won or your side won.
And no one wins at the bottom.
Right.
There's no populist party anymore.
Right. And that just may not be where we're going to get solutions. We may need to actually just focus on building relationships, building communities, working with each other, and build this from the bottom up instead of trying to go to national politics. I do think like if people want solutions, they need to focus.
But they just throw money into marketing. They've got great marketers.
Just ignore it. Focus on your local politics first, right? If you want to do politics, start there. That is the majority of what's going to impact your day-to-day life.
This goes back to that locus of control.
Right.
What can you influence versus what's the other one? Influence versus awareness
And that's a way to address the anger. Because when I hear you talking about the anger here, and it's also the anger reading.
Yeah.
It's an anger that is rooted in hopelessness. Like
hopelessness.
I don't understand what the heck this guy is talking about. I don't know if I can even get my head around
it.
Why does he have to be like that and take the power of my understanding away from me?
Yeah. Well, it takes away my faith in humanity. and even doing this takes away my faith, because I watch all this and it seems like what folks want is us arguing. What folks want is provocative content. What folks want is like sex, drugs, rock and roll. If you were someone that went to jail for murder and is out now and talks about your experience in prison, there'd be tons of people wanting to watch it. And we're just perpetuating like this negativity and this like, why don't we have the role models in music, in movies, in podcasts, and in TV be simple life folks? He got up, he was nice to all of his neighbors, he didn't fight with anybody. That's not exciting.
I mean, Well, it's interesting because, like, you look at the whole cozy phenomena. Have you followed that at all?
No, what's up with cozy?
It's like a whole sort of online aesthetic phenomena. There's cozy fiction. There's
I need to
cozy-
tap into
Yeah,
cozy.
because cozy is really all about. There's cozy gaming. It's all about just sort of like
This is chill, man.
let's assert the value of coziness, of being chill, of being comfortable, and spending time in that space with each other.
I think that's probably better for the human spirit.
Yeah.
Because this yellow journalism taken to the max is really just perpetuating the things that we don't want in society.
Right.
Because we're low key modeling it for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And not even low key, high volume, you
Mhm.
know, all the music, and I love hip hop music, but how did I get to be in alignment with Tipper Gore and Nancy Reagan? When did that happen? That I'm like, we really should put more thoughtfulness into what we're platforming.
Right. But well, and I think there's a different way. So what's the problem with Tipper Gore and Nancy Reagan to me is they were like, we need to create more rules from the top to make people be thoughtful about what they're performing and make sure only the proper performers go out.
You need that happen from the bottom.
But I think what we need to do is say, as creatives, as performers, as creators of content, how do we take responsibility to do the work that is in front of us to contribute
In a meaningful, thoughtful
in a meaningful,
way.
thoughtful way?
But if no one watches, if you can't find an audience and you see other people with an audience with this more extreme stuff,
right?
you just slowly, it might take a while, but it slowly goes, oh,
Yeah, I mean,
when I get excited, they like it. When I talk
yeah,
about,
I mean, if your model is to enter into the entrepreneurship model that is the heart of late stage capitalism, that you just need to accumulate the capital, the views, the whatnot to just sort of generate a capital stream to sustain yourself, it's going to be hard.
because you're playing the same game that
You're playing the
you're
same
trying
game.
to not do. I don't know how to pay the mortgage and get food and do all that stuff
Yeah.
and not play the game.
I know. That's why capitalism sucks.
Yeah.
Because part of its and I mean, and when I say that, I mean it, the real,
It's not working for the masses.
as an ideological form.